5 and heading east. It's 10 miles from Syracuse. Yeah, you know the place. Down by the creek and up on the hill. The Village of Fayetteville, New York.
Wait to cross Genesee Street.
Out here, yesterday is waiting for discovery.
But Fayetteville is a little gem. Because we have preserved enough of the buildings since the mid-1800s, it shows what we are and what we were. And it is the heart of Fayetteville.
The historical district runs along East Genesee Street, from Limestone Plaza to Academy Street. And I'll give it to you straight, I mean really straight. The neighborhood features column after column after column of Greek Revival architecture. However,
interesting to be able to see the diversity of styles as you go up Route 5.
If you walk the cemeteries locally, many of the original names of all these people that put Fayetteville together, they're all there in the Fayetteville Cemetery and the Catholic Cemetery.
Huntington Baird was one of 7 Baird siblings. And in 1866, he built this mansion at 116 East Genesee Street, a building of size and character. A 100-year-old building that in 1967 was torn down and cleared out for a new Masonic lodge.
There was an uproar of the loss of such a prestigious house, and there was an effort created to make this a National Register Historic District.
That effort became the Historic Preservation Commission of the Village of Fayetteville.
It was done to bring awareness to the historic properties and to help preserve them so that they're not actually torn down or defaced in any manner that wouldn't represent what they were when they were first built.
There are 44 properties, all contributing to the historic district.
It's different from just a regular suburb or something like that, where all the houses are cookie cutter designed. So the village is very, very unique in that sense.
The Village of Fayetteville is very distinctive because of the historic character that we see in the village.
People say when they drive by, drive through, or they live here, that it's the most charming village that they've really ever experienced.
And it's that preservation that really contributes to the historic character of the village and is, in fact, worth preserving. The Village of Fayetteville predates the city of Syracuse. It was an early industrial center.
By the 1870s, Fayetteville's economy was booming. Things were moving. Things were shaking. Water, water everywhere. Water from Limestone Creek, powering the multitude of mills. Water, exporting trade to the Erie Canal. It was a prosperous time indeed.
People had income, therefore they could build houses, build schools, build churches.
And so the wealthy merchants and mill owners began building homes up the Genesee Turnpike Hill.
It was a hotbed of suffrage and abolitionists.
Matilda Joslyn Gage, a pioneering advocate of abolition and women's rights, lived right here at 210 East Genesee Street. Today, the legacy of her work lives on at that location as the Matilda Joslyn Gage Center for Social Justice.
There is a lot of history here.
He was the hometown boy who made good, becoming the 22nd and 24th President of the United States. Stephen Grover Cleveland grew up at 109 Academy Street. He was the fifth child of the Reverend Richard Cleveland and his wife Ann's 9 children. Just around the corner on Elm was the Fayetteville Academy School, which young Grover attended. Apparently, he was a bit of a mischievous lad, because one late night he climbed into the Academy belfry, ringing the bell and waking the village.
Yeah, that just brings the attraction even more so to the village. And you can just imagine what it felt like back when he did live here and then became president, what the residents must have really thought. Yeah. This picture here of your grandfather, he looks like he's talking to his great uncle there. Maybe saying, "Whoa," to the horses, I'm not sure.
The families of Malcolm and Pam Bender have lived in the Fayetteville area for over 100 years. The couple are quite adept when it comes to putting the puzzle of the past together.
19-teens or so, my grandfather became the tenant farmer on the Collin farm. My father told me it was very important that the sidewalks were plowed clear early in the morning because there were 5 churches here in Fayetteville, and enough people would walk to church and they wanted those sidewalks clean. My father told me an awful lot of things about what was where, when, and so did my grandfather. There's a house that is a one-family house now, but at one time back in the 1920s it was a tea room. And there was a trolley car that came all the way from DeWitt and all the way to Manlius, and that tea room was a popular stop.
And speaking of horses...
And what are these stones on the ground here, these big stones?
Well, that large one over there is definitely an old stepping stone for when carriages went by and people wanted to get into the carriage or get out of their horse, whatever it may be, before we had cars.
Windows, windows everywhere. Windows, looking into yesterday.
It's definitely very important to learn about who lived here and the various different houses.
This is a house at 305 East Genesee Street here in Fayetteville. This is where Linnaeus Noble lived, and he was active in the abolition movement.
Linnaeus P. Noble was a fervent believer in social justice and was the first publisher of the National Era, an anti-slavery journal published in Washington, D.C.
They made Fayetteville what it is. We had entrepreneurs that had different mills.
Probably the biggest house on Genesee Street is on the corner of Edwards Lane and Genesee Street. That house was lived in by the Gaynor family for a long time. The Gaynor family was part of Bangs and Gaynor, which is a cement and plaster making company. That was right where the town office building is now, down on Brookley Drive.
And what you see here in Fayetteville that still exists is what they were working toward.
A fellow named Hervey Edwards lived here, and that's why the name of that little street is called Edwards Lane.
Hervey Edwards was not only one of Fayetteville's first prominent businessmen, but was well known for his many philanthropic endeavors, which included his liberal assistance in building each of the village churches.
They had a vision and they followed it, and they had a passion and they followed their passion, and we get to enjoy what they did.
Well, it was built by a person named Adna Trest, and he was one of the first mill owners here in the Fayetteville area.
The house was later purchased by Beach Baird for his son Henry in 1854. The same year, he built the Baird Hotel in the commercial district. Gone, but not forgotten.
There were a whole handful of different Baird family members, and they all were prominent mill owners and other business owners.
The house that we're in, 114 East Genesee Street, is circa 1840. I say that because we don't know exactly when it was built, so the house itself is actually older than the village. We know who built it, which was Andrew T. Gilmore, who was postmaster for the Village of Fayetteville.
When architect Greg Polhamus and his wife Catherine bought the house in 2009, they had their work cut out for them.
It was in a lot of disrepair. There were portions of the floor that had collapsed, windows that were broken, roof leaked, so there was extensive renovations required to make this habitable again.
It took a few years, but today the Polhamus' residence has been restored to its 19th century luster. That is, except for this space.
This is actually one of the original walls to the 1840 circa house. We left it exposed because it kind of tells the story of what happened before this addition was put on.
There are many stories in this house. Craig has done extensive research into the previous residents of his home, one of whom was Ellen Baird Krause, the younger sister of Huntington and Beach.
Every day I think about the historic people who lived here years before and just feel a connection with them. So it's delightful for the most part.
And there have been other uses for the building. It was the first Fayetteville library. When, in 1906, it became a subscription reading room where citizens shared their periodical magazines and newspapers until 1922, when the library moved across the street.
Of course, the library was downstairs here. Upstairs was vacant. They made good use of the upstairs for these classrooms. It was the site of the first domestic science course in New York State. We probably know it today as home ec. And there's a whole curriculum that was developed for that. And that makes this a very significant home. In the 1930s, this was the A&P tea shop. Remember, this was during Prohibition, so I suspect they may have served more than just tea. We found a bottle of Old Smugglers.
And that's not all Craig and Catherine found. There was stuff everywhere.
This is another piece that came with the house. It's a leather trunk.
And while excavating the rubble, they found a number of artifacts. A chair, a book, and several antique cans.
There's certain things that have history intrinsic with them. To take and preserve even a small artifact, I think is important for our future generations. When we were renovating the house, we found this trunk in the basement.
And it wasn't just any trunk, it was Huntington Baird's trunk.
I find it remarkable that we can have an artifact that is so tangible to the history of the village. So I'm pleased to be able to allow that to continue into the future. To understand the lives of the folks that came here before really puts you in touch in a very tangible way in our history. And from that, there's so much enrichment in understanding the nature and character of times that are before us. And I find very encouraging to know that you're part of a continuation, that you're really here for a short time, and your duty is to pass along what we have to the next generation. And then in turn, they will continue the preservation.
Out there on Genesee Street, they're heading back to the village tonight, home to the creek, the top of the hill, and everything else. Just another chapter, verse, and footnote to that old story about the village of Fayetteville, New York. 10 miles from Syracuse, a long, long time ago.
Wait to cross Genesee Street.